The following readings are from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Each week, we read from both scriptures as prescribed by Yogananda ji and his guru Sri Yukteswar ji, who was guided by Babaji to compare the two scriptures and to show the same underlying truths between them. This week's reading is titled Deeds versus Intentions. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ emphasized repeatedly the spirit, not the letter of the law. In chapter 5 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, he speaks of the sin of killing and of the legal punishment attendant on that sin, but says that more important than the act is the desire to kill or to do harm. He shows that the sin of harmful desire goes beyond merely wanting to kill. My message to you, he said, is this: whoever is angry with his brother without cause already stands condemned. Whoever contemptuously calls his brother a fool shall answer for it to the Supreme Council, and whoever calls his brother an outcast of God shall be in danger of hellfire. Brother here means any other human being. For all of us, in the highest sense, are brothers and sisters, children of the one Father, Mother, God. The true self is the one, the true self of one is the self of all. To hurt another, even if one doesn't realize it, is to hurt oneself. Swami Kriyananda in The Path recalls an episode in which the master Paramahansa Yogananda revealed his sense of identity even with the plants. One day, Kriyananda wrote, we were moving a delicate but rather heavy tropical plant into position on the hillside. Our handling evidently was too rough, for Master cried out, be careful of what you are doing. Can't you feel it's alive? To wish death to anyone, to wish even harm to another creature, is to deny in oneself the reality of that divine life of which all of us are manifestations. It is, in short, to deny the eternal truth proclaimed by the Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter. This self is never born, nor does it perish. Once existing, it cannot ever cease to be. It is birthless, eternal, changeless, ever itself. It is not slain when the body is slain. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This reading is from Whispers from Eternity by Paramhansa Yogananda, a book of prayer poems. This is entitled, Keep the Compass Needle of My Attention Ever Pointing Toward Thee. Master writes, whether soaring through the sky, encased in a steel air cage, or drawn o'er the land by snorting iron steeds, or moving easily over smooth highways on rubber wheels, or having my very thoughts paralyzed by the pounding din of assembly lines, the compass needle of my attention will ever keep turning toward thy magnetic North Pole of divine love. Beaten by winds of happenstance, drenched by cloudbursts of misery, sucked down in the mud of soul enmeshing, ego-whipped activity, or wandering lost in jungles of confusion, my mind will yet ever reach out for thy guiding touch. The raft of my life, tossed about helplessly by the driving storms of need, was drifting towards rocks of insatiable desire. O pole star in our wisdom skies, thy twinkling light beckoned and directed me toward thy shores of eternal contentment. Though countless mechanisms pound, twist, or stretch my anguished nerves, yet will the homing pigeon of my love wing its way peacefully toward its true home in thee. It's so nice to have Master's words with these modern images, current images, because we can always read about as I peacefully walked alongside the Ganges, with my danda. Was that Monday? I mean, when was the last time we walked alongside the Ganges? And it's you get a feeling sometimes for pilgrimage because you realize it's been too long. I know the first time I saw the Ganges, speaking of the Ganges, I when I finally saw it at Haridwar, I I thought, why have I waited this long in this life to reconnect with Ma Ganga? There was something, it was familiar, but it was almost like I was late. Like she had said, now you come after 30 years or whatever. It was really something, not something I expected. I didn't have sort of a romance around the Ganges much, a little bit, just because all that the masters and saints to speak of it, but still, there was something very deep. And it was funny because Dharmini and I were visiting some of our cousins who stay in Mylapore. We saw them earlier this week. And when we were talking about, somehow the topic of the Ganges came up, and my cousin said, "Oh, the Ganges. Oh, just when I saw it, oh, I just felt this peace." And so it's it's important to go to the Ganges, and so that is a point. But we are very often more in these iron air cages, or being drawn by these steel air cages and iron steeds and rubber wheels and all of it. I think all of us have had experience with rubber wheels. That's pretty much everything you do unless you use rubber feet. And so shoes. And so the knowing that yes, all these things are there and still God is there. It's helpful because otherwise we think of our life as this is my spiritual life and then this is everything else. And so to always be remembering God, calling out to God no matter what. It doesn't matter how successful we are. It's that we keep reaching out for God. That's one thing to keep in mind, but we'll come back to that. This topic of deeds versus intentions is very crucial on the spiritual path at all stages, you can say. In the beginning, there is this the thought that, or this truth that we're learning, that what I think matters, even if I didn't say it, even if I didn't act it out. If I have a harsh thought, somehow that still counts. Not to say, therefore, to be critical at ourselves for everything that we think, but to say I want to improve myself even on the thought level. It's true, the first step is to improve ourselves on the action level. If we are acting out our angry thoughts, first step would be to not somehow just and forcibly take ourselves away, and then maybe go scream at a pillow or something, poor defenseless pillow, but the pillow doesn't mind. That's what it's there for. But then to then say, okay, well, now I'm not acting it out, but I'm thinking it. How can I work with myself? And then also to talk with another person. If there's a disagreement, it's good to communicate. Swamiji said, don't talk right away because you'll still feel frustrated and the emotions will still be high, but do talk. So, in other words, don't talk right away. That's exactly what I do. There's an argument we had 20 years ago and I'm still waiting. No, you can't do that because, as you all know, what happens to the cooker eventually? The pressure cooker, it explodes. So we have to find a way to not only release that pressure, but also to have a discussion with the other person. And it's helpful if we can be calm about it and trying to see the situation even from the other person's point of view. I've told you this, that I had a boss, and she was very busy, and I was also very busy. We were in jobs that were dealing. Well, it was in a school. I was a school teacher. It can't really, otherwise it sounds too mysterious. There were a lot of people, and it was crazy all the time. It's a school. So I was teaching in this school. So there were very few moments when you actually have free time as a teacher because the children are occupied chewing on some food or something. Then you can run and get a little bit of adult work done. So whenever I would see her, I would run to her and ask her the question that was on my mind so I could continue to work. And after one day, she surprised me by saying, Dharmaraj, you always have the worst timing. And I was surprised because of course, as I've told you before, I thought about the sort of mathematical implications of that. Always having the worst timing would argue a certain amount of genius on my part. But anyway, what I realized, I wondered, why is she so frustrated? I'm just asking a question. I need some help here. But I realized I was just looking at it from my perspective. I didn't know what to do. I had to ask her. There she was. Grab the opportunity. But I realized I wasn't looking first to see what situation she was in. If she was in 3 conversations with other people, and there I was going to just jump into it, was she, we didn't have cell phones back then, so that wasn't an issue, but was she writing something down and I just, excuse me, I was just charging in. And she, if I was busy, how busy do you think she was? So I learned to sort of stop and watch and assess the situation and see if there might be an opening. And if there wasn't, then I just said, oh, well, some other time, and see if I could talk to her later. And I learned how to say, is now a good time? Do you have a moment? In case you have a moment, always with a question that she could say, sorry, now's not a good time, as opposed to, I want, Ippo. And so you could say, yeah, I learned this lesson when I was 7 years old. Well, I was a late bloomer. It took me a while to pick up on some of these things. But I remember once in another situation, I was talking to someone and she was working with her boss. And I said, we're not going to be able to decide this ourselves. You better just, you better ask your boss, basically. And let's say her boss's name was Parvati. It wasn't, but and she said, Parvati. And I said, I kind of want to say her name, but I just said, you never do that. We were actually setting up for a meditation program and all that. So I said, you first look where she is, you walk over to where she is, you see if she's talking to someone, and if she is, you wait. And then when she's done, you say, if you have a moment, I have a question. And she's, really? And I said, do it. And so anyway, the only reason I mentioned it is because a few months later, she said to me, thank you so much for that advice. Things are so much better for me, for me now, and so on, because her boss was a very patient person. And, she wouldn't necessarily say it to her because it's not always easy to have these conversations when you're the one involved. But I knew this person from long ago, and I felt compelled to help her in the way that I needed the same help. So to be aware of the other person's reality can be very helpful. But why is it that our intentions matter, even if we don't act them out? Well, one simple reason is that we get karma from even our thoughts. We get karma, you could say, in a way, there's more karma if we act out those thoughts, but there's still karma if there are the thoughts. And conversely, suppose we do a karmic action of hitting somebody accidentally. We are making grand gestures and we swing and we hit somebody, but we didn't mean to, and we apologize, as opposed to, well, you were in the way of my grand gesture. No, we say, sorry, I didn't mean to. That gives us less karma than if we think, yeah, if your face were right here, I could tell you what I would do with that, but we don't act it out. I didn't do anything. That's worse because we really meant that. How much we mean, how much we feel, how much we intend is what generates the strength of that karma. And that's very important to remember. It's just the way it is. But that's just about the law. This is the law. It's helpful to know the law because if you cooperate with the law, things go better. But it's more than that, because even if we have hurt another person and denied, therefore, that the same life that is in us is in them, and that's against the law, it's not the truth. But more than that, we feel it, don't we? When we hurt somebody, or even if we think something nasty about somebody, later our heart doesn't feel so good. We have kind of a sadness or a regret, or we feel embarrassed. Or what happens also, as Swamiji pointed out, when someone says an unkind thing, they'll laugh. You know, there's that guy. He said, no, why do people laugh after they say something unkind? And he said it's because instinctively they feel that pinch in the heart and they're trying to laugh it off. They're trying to laugh to get rid of it, to try to feel better. So first of all, watch it, and if you're in yourself, if you find yourself going, that laughter is betraying the fact that you're actually not pleased with what you just said. And if someone else does it, don't say, you know what that means? Actually, let me tell you, Swami Kriyananda said, no, don't do that unless they're open, which is never. And then meaning, or at least it's later. But just saying, well, that laughter tells me that somewhere in their heart, they too regret that they just said that nasty thing. And think about it. How many times do you wake up in the morning and feel so good and everything is wonderful, and you feel just like, oh, I'm going to have such a good day. And then you see someone and go, "Grr." Never. We only lash out when we're uncomfortable, when we're hurting, when we're angry, when we're worried, when we can't take one more poke from life, and this person delivered the poke by appearing innocently on the scene. Don't give me one more thing to think about. And so anybody coming at us with that energy is probably diagnosed the same way. Their stress levels are up to here, and somehow us appearing on the scene, our appearing on the scene was too much somehow. But it's very helpful if we try not to react in the moment. This was something Swamiji often repeated, that he had a friend who lived in Delhi. And when she got married, her mother-in-law said, I know my son much better than you. And I will tell you that if he argues, don't argue back. If he shouts, don't shout back. Give him time, and in time he will come around. But if you fight, it will just be constant fighting. And so this woman, this new wife, said that she found that she always got her way in every argument, because whenever he didn't like something, he would shout, he would argue, she wouldn't say anything. And then later, he would come back and apologize. And because he felt bad, he would be inclined to say yes to whatever it was that she wanted. But of course, it would be also helpful for that husband to grow, to have an emotional maturity older than 5 years old. And so we have to look at ourselves and say, what is our responsibility? My responsibility is to grow. But I have seen it in my own life that if I don't fight back in the moment, and then if the person often, even if they're like, I mean it, I mean it, I mean it. And then later they'll say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it, actually. I shouldn't have been that, but we get seized, especially in April and May when it's hot. Agni Nakshatra is not outside, it is inside. Our internal temperature goes up very high. So we noticed in Alwarpet, we could measure the temperature by the sort of decibel level of the neighbors shouting. You could sort of tell, oh, it must be hot today because the shouting is getting worse and worse and worse. We would just pray for them because, they were upset. And then similarly here, we almost get no shouting, but once in a while, I heard shouting the other day, and I thought, Agni Nakshatra is coming. April, okay. It's hot. And that's the reason right now you could say in the next 6 weeks for every argument, it's hot. You're hot, I'm hot. That's the argument. So just wait till June or something. In other words, give people the benefit of the doubt. Plus, we had this transit that happened and all that, and it was a good excuse to talk about how to deal with conflict, because it comes up all the time. But for us as devotees, we start to feel peace when we meditate. We feel peace when we chant. Anyone can do this. I don't mean only devotees, but devotees, you could say, make a profession of it. My job is to feel peace. My job is to feel calmness. My job is to feel joy. And that's my hobby. You could say, what is your hobby? Santosham. That is my hobby. And so when we do that, we automatically look for anyone who meditates finds that then that peace, that joy gets disturbed by something. And so we start to find ways to protect it. to find ways to avoid it getting disturbed, to avoid spilling it. And we become protective, as I say, of it. And so we find a few things. When we do an action that causes us, like respond in anger, we find that we lose that joy that we were working so hard on developing. And so we start to lose our taste for those actions. And though it's not even that, so in other words, if you're worried about or you're working on anger, one way, there's a few things, since it's sort of related to this topic. One thing is to have more peace at other times. Meditation is a controlled time. You could say it's like a rehearsal for the day. I'm meditating, I'm here by myself. Don't look at emails before you meditate, because otherwise you may be meditating on that email the whole time. This is one law that Jyotishji gave as a leader. Don't look at messages before you meditate, just so you can be with God with a blank slate, not knowing what is coming in this day. And then we take that piece out. And then when we first of all, we find ourselves less likely to get angry because we've gotten so peaceful. We've reduced the stress level, if you want to look at it that way. It's much deeper than that, but it's a valid way to look at it, so that we can tolerate more. You see, if the stress level starts at maximum, guess what? Volcano, ready to erupt, already bubbling. I knew someone like that. He would sort of, when you were saying something, and he would go, hmm, 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 and it would grow. And I always knew. And he'd probably say, you know what your problem is? Yes, you might as well say it. I mean, he had been building up, getting ready to pop. And so it was helpful as I saw it coming. So then I went, all right, here it comes. So let us not be like that. So just let the, first of all, start as calm as we can. Another is, again, if we are calm, when we do the wrong thing, we regret it and we know it because, hey, I used to feel better than this. And now I have gotten upset. We could say, yes, but I was hurt. I was victimized. I was, challenged, damaged by this other person. And yet, even in situations like that, where I have felt it was completely on them and not at all on me, I am the victim, that I have also thought, yes, but how would Swamiji react to that? How would Master react to that? They had to deal with much more difficult things than I have. And I could see Swamiji just, okay, you seem to be in a bad mood today or something. Is something wrong? I saw so many times he would react calmly to people's outbursts. Master, you've heard him tell the stories of this one man who came in and criticized him. You are taking money in religion and so on. And Master's friends were wanting to throw the man out. And Master just said, maybe you are right. Maybe you are right. Maybe you are right. This is what Sri Yukteswar's not only advice, but practice was. He would always say, maybe you are right. Master said, maybe you are right means maybe you are right and maybe you are wrong. But he doesn't, you don't say, maybe you are wrong. Maybe you are wrong. Definitely you are. You just, maybe you are right. He says, it doesn't mean you're agreeing, but you're saying, maybe you're right. And so the man who was doing this to Master, after an hour, finally gave up in exhaustion and said, first time I've been defeated. Because he just wouldn't fight back. And then the man exhausted himself. Even boxers which is not something we're going to be getting into, but in the ring when they're fighting, sometimes they purposely say, let your opponent hit you a little bit because he'll get tired. And so that's not advice we're going to translate into daily life, but to say people will eventually tire themselves out. If somebody has a habit of criticizing you constantly, don't worry. In time, they will just get bored. If you don't change, they will just get bored because they're more interested in themselves than in you. I found this out finally after years. Somebody finally got bored, and went on to other topics. But another thing to keep in mind is, as Krishna says in the Gita right before this, I think, anyway, about anger, that basically desire when unfulfilled flames to anger. So anytime we are angry, it's because we had a desire that was unfulfilled. We didn't get what we wanted. And so that's a perfect way to self-diagnose. because I remember once, I mean, suppose you think I don't have anger, and then you find you have anger, and then say, oh, well, what desire was thwarted that made me angry? Or suppose some people will say, I don't have desires. You know, I've gotten to the point, I've done Hong Sau for 1 week, and now I don't have any desires anymore. And then, you know, say, I don't have desires. Hey, I'm the one talking here, okay? I'm talking about I don't have desires. And he's, so that's a way that we can self-diagnose that if we get angry, it means we do have desires. And it's just the desire for basic human decency and treatment. It's my turn. Still, it's a desire. You never know. God, Master, Divine Mother may be having fun with you. A friend of mine was telling a story of two men who were blocking his path on the road, and he was feeling a little frustrated because they were sort of, you know, doing this we are a human barricade kind of thing, not consciously, but if they didn't move, he was going to either have to go into the ditch or separate them. And he was feeling a little, it was outside, it was April, so it's hot. Remember, that's always the reason. And they even saw him, but they wouldn't move. The one man saw him but wouldn't move. The other man turned. And my friend, of course, didn't want to feel this way, but you can't help it when just headless people are sitting there and not taking into account there are other people on this planet. The other man turned and addressed him in Bengali. And just the fact of him speaking Bengali made him think of Master and made him feel how Master must just be having fun with him. You see, Master is everywhere. Look for Master in the situation, either to say maybe he's playing a joke on you. I mean, Master used to do that. He was on the third floor, and there would be people downstairs talking too loudly. And he was trying to write. And they would talk and they would talk, and it would still be too loud. So they would say, hey, he would call out to them. And, yep, hello, and he would call. They say, and he said, look, you know, and they'd put their head out. Yes, master. And then he'd say, no, put your head out farther. Yes, master. And he would dump water on them. And that was his way of saying shh. So I wouldn't recommend that unless you really know the person well. But the thing is that think of when master is doing that to us. You see that he just says, hey, yada. And he's just saying, come on, he's having fun. You know, uh, people would, uh, Master would push people sometime to just to test them, to help them to just lighten up, to relax. So Master may be doing that to us. Or if not, Master's shoulder is the one you can always cry on. There's that too. So that's the other side of it. I remember this isn't really related, but it came to my mind. I was when I was a school teacher, we were acting in a play with children and adults. Mostly it was the children, but there were some parts that were better played by the adults. We always did the life of a spiritual person. So 1 year it was Krishna, 1 year it was Buddha, 1 year it was Jesus Christ. We were having to explain to the children why it's better if a man plays Judas, and you know, better you not give that to a kid, and so on. But eventually the kids became old enough that they could do all the parts. But I had never been in a play before. And so every time the teachers were directing the children, I was taking it in too, because I had never had the experience. And so they were saying, the way we rehearse is the way we perform. You know, don't think that you can just be like, it's not real, it's just practice, and then suddenly be brilliant on stage. So, you know, it was like stand straight, you know, don't do this, be like this in rehearsal, partly because it builds the habit. So then when you perform, it'll already be there. And so, of course, the ultimate rule, the show must go on. That was the other thing. But so they were saying, children, when we walk in, all the audience is going to be seated there. And you don't say, hi, Amma, hi, bye. You just, and you take your seat in one motion, not just because if you do, it will draw the attention away from whatever is supposed to be there. So I was, yeah, okay. So we walked in on the first performance, and this was in the Ananda school, and I sat down, and then I was, you know, focused. It was, again, my first time, and I felt this, on my shoulder. And I knew that Asha and David had brought Swamiji and they were sitting behind me. And I figured, oh, David is teasing me because he thinks, like, ha, 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 ha. And I'm not going to break this is just a test. So finally I turned, but it was Swamiji. He was the one hitting me with a piece of paper and he just smiled to say hi. So I realized, okay, there are limits to this. If the guru is there, just be with the guru. Who cares about all these things? So the the other thing to remember then is that if, for example, someone is in an argument with you, that again, try to see it from their point of view. And also, if you can, try to let the other person speak first, because they may say 60% of what you wanted to say, but it's much better if they say it, because then you can agree. Or you can even say, that's a good point. That's a good idea. That's something that Swamiji would say to me all the time. Not all the time, but when we would talk, sometimes he would say, that's a good idea. Thank you very much. That's a good idea. And then, to my horror, one day, we were in a meeting. Swamiji and I and others were talking before someone else came in. And then Swamiji said, why don't we do this? And then the person came in and Swamiji said, what do you think? And the person said, well, why don't we do this? The same thing that Swamiji said. And Swamiji said, that's a good idea. And the person smiled, and I realized this whole time, all the great ideas, the brilliant inventions I had come up with, he'd already thought of the whole time. He knew, but he was encouraging me. But he was doing it sincerely. He wasn't saying, that's a good idea. He wasn't doing that, because he said that who cares who thought of an idea? An idea is just a thing. Don't say that's my idea as often as a way of agreeing with someone when they say, here's something we might try. That's a good idea. I've often had that same idea myself. As if, therefore, it's a good idea because I had it also. And you see, there's no need to mention that. I say this because that cured me or tried to cure me of that habit. It doesn't matter if we've thought of it. It's just an idea. And similarly, sometimes somebody who generally doesn't have good ideas might still get lucky. And so when someone says, yeah, I just want to say one thing. Okay, here we go. Let me see how I can just sleep for 5 minutes while nonsense is poured into the air. No. Swamiji said, consider the merits of an idea no matter what its source. You never know. Somebody may be bringing up a really good point. And besides, it's just not fair to just automatically, as one person said to me, whenever so-and-so speaks, my ears automatically close. He had like a technique where he could take this tragus and just shut the ears and just, I don't hear a word, but that's not fair. If God is sending us this person, if only to test our patience, let us get a good workout on this one. So with all of these things, then, just remember, Master is always there in the situation. He's helping, or he's maybe again having fun. Maybe he's testing us. But you can tell him, I don't like this test. I don't mean that we should be fake about our feelings, but share them with him, because he can receive them. And then once we're calmer, maybe we can talk to the other person. But I wanted to mention this other aspect of deeds versus intentions, that, okay, in the beginning on the spiritual path, we discover my thoughts matter, partly because I'm told that they matter. Okay, there's karma for thoughts. Okay, wow, that's scary. But then also that my own peace gets disturbed if my thoughts are unhappy, and I don't want that. So then we, again, lose our taste for that. On the other hand, though, we should remember, well, I guess there's sort of three cases. There's I didn't do any action, though I had very bad intentions, but it doesn't matter, right? Because I didn't do it. Eh. The other is I did something, but I can say I didn't mean it. I said something that upset you, but I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to upset you. So therefore, I am good and innocent and pure, and you are reactive. No, there was somebody at Ananda who had a habit of doing that all the time. She always would just say, oh, it wasn't my intention. And or if I did it by accident. Or it was Maya that did it. And in this way, she was always right. And all these other people with tears and tissues and everything, it was always their fault for being emotional. And Swamiji caught wind of this, and Swamiji said, remember, the energy is coming from you. So it is your responsibility, even if it is Maya. It's you, it is coming through you as the channel. So don't overlook your own responsibility. So let us, if we discover that we are causing disharmony, to say, well, what can I do? Even if it's confusing, why are you always mad every time I say something? I noticed that once in a situation. Every time I would say, oh, and what about this, people? And they wouldn't say anything, but I didn't know why. I thought, it's not like I'm saying bad things. I think I'm contributing to the discussion, but was all I ever got. Maybe it was some new pranayama I hadn't heard of before. But I thought, well, why would they get angry? So I thought, well, maybe talking more would help. No, no. So that didn't work. So then I thought, well, but I have thoughts and they seem relevant to the discussion and they seem like they add. It was always to endorse. It wasn't to say, well, you know what I think and what I've done. It wasn't even that. I had learned that much at least. But then I thought, well, if they're not interested, then maybe I should just keep quiet. Suddenly smiles. The more quiet I was, the more the smiles were. Who knows? Maybe the person just didn't want to hear from one more person or hear from me, whatever. But I just thought, well, it doesn't really matter why. I'll just be quiet. I don't have to be there and register my presence constantly. Fine, let's just be quiet. Let's just get the job done. And then the relationship became much more harmonious. It was a little strange because I wouldn't mind saying, but so what? That was my desire. It was my desire to be heard, but everything was saying, ni vendam or something, even if the grammar isn't right, you know what I mean. And so it was just like, just be quiet. Then I felt more peaceful too. So, okay. It was unusual for me to be quiet. So I got to experience that. Wow, you can be in a room and not talk for a while, and people won't even know you're there after a while. This is amazing. So, you get to have a different view on life. Maybe Master wanted it, who knows? But I learned to I am in the process of learning, trying to assess the situation. The modern slang is read the room and just kind of say, is this fitting? Is this needed? Is this helpful? That's another thing. Is what I'm doing helpful? Because if I'm getting a lot of, it's not helpful. Even if it should be helpful, even if I mean to be helpful, it's not helpful right now. Why? Well, maybe we can understand that, but let me not just keep imposing myself on an unappreciative audience. So, which I hope is not right now. But I got a few reassuring smiles and one, no, I'm kidding. So the last thing I did want to say though is Master, I read this recently and I'd not heard it before. Master said, he said, don't argue with people, try to reason with them. And you could say, well, people will use reason in arguments, like the reason why you're so wrong is, but that's not what Master meant. Because he says, when you argue with someone, you're trying to win your point. You're both fighting to see who can win, who can be right, who can win the argument. Ah, I have won. I remember that happened, unfortunately. I was very frustrated about something, and the person picked the wrong time to kind of pick an argument with me. We were in this big group, and I kept arguing back and arguing back quietly until finally though he kept arguing too, finally said, no, you are right, very graciously. And I said, ha! And every head in the place turned, and my friend was no longer my friend. Just, I mean, it was so stupid, but I had lost like 100 arguments before that day. And when I finally won that, the force of those 100 losses came out, unfortunately, on that poor guy. So the don't try to win, try to find the truth. Try to be generous and let the other person win a few points. What if you have someone who just wants to attack you and you're nervous about this conversation? This happened to me too. And Swamiji gave me the advice that first let the other person talk. He said, this person seems to like to assert themselves onto people. Let them. and just let them talk. And eventually they will be talked out again, like the boxer. They will kind of be punched out and tired. And then you may be able to say something back. And I had never done that. And my goal was always to say something first. But I decided I would try it because I was nervous. And I found the whole time the person was talking and all kinds of difficult things, I just did Kriya very quietly, very not, excuse me, I'm going to meditate. I did it very discreetly. And also, as he was making different points, it allowed me to know what he was thinking in this discussion, which was really an argument. And then it allowed me to sort of craft replies to what he was thinking. And I realized it was like he had laid his battle plans all on the table. So I could see what they were, and then I could know what they were, and then I could answer them. So it was very calming to just sit quietly and let him talk. And finally, he, after an hour, kind of, so you want to say something? But that meant he was finally receptive. It took him an hour to be able to open his ears, because otherwise, if you're saying something first, the other person is, when is it my turn? When is it my turn? When is it my turn? That's all they hear in their own heads. When is it my turn? And everything you've said, you're going to have to say again anyway. So it can be very helpful in that way to be patient. But Master said, don't try to win, just try to find the truth. And when you find someone who does say, oh, you're right, they see the truth, that's a very good sign that you can build a friendship from there, because devotees care about what is true. And if you find someone else, even if not interested in God, who says that, oh, if this is true, then I drop my argument against it, that's wonderful. Not everyone is like that. So have respect, even for an opponent, even for an enemy of sorts. If they respect the truth, that's still something that's very precious, because that's all that really matters in the end, is the truth. And then on our side, remember that God is, as I said, always loving us, always having fun with us. And the best way also to cope with all of this is just do Kriya. I had to rediscover that earlier this week. Something was going on and I couldn't quite get a handle on it and so on. And I tried with mental power to kind of, okay, if it's this, if it's that. And then I sort of prayed to Master, should I do this? Okay. Should I do that? Okay. Should I meditate? Yes. Oh, okay. Just did Kriya and then it was all solved. Why? Because I was in a good mood and I didn't even care anymore about the situation. There was nothing to be done about it anyway. I was having a good worry about it, which does nothing. So just do Kriya, offer it up, be with God, and that really is the solution for